Good morning, everybody. It is time for another great episode of GoJo and Golic. So we are going to talk about the NFL games that we did not get to yesterday, and we'll talk about Monday Night Football, plus teams that really just needed to get their last win in the regular season in college football didn't do that. So the college football playoff looking a little complicated, plus Charlotte Wilder joining the program. We're going to talk about what's going on with LeBron James, and spoiler alert, it's not good. All that and more coming up on GoJo and Golic.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., Jesse Cofield here. We're presented by Campbell's Chunky, soup that eats like a meal, and we got a great show for you today. Make sure you download, subscribe, rate, and review us. Leave us a 5-star rating. Check us out here live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network and our new YouTube channel. Charlotte Wilder, as Jesse mentioned, going to join us in hour number 2 for a Wilder Wednesday on a Tuesday. Get things back on track here after the holiday week here. We're visiting some controversial takes on leftovers with her, which I'm looking forward to. But we will get to some NFL leftovers as well after we digest whatever the hell happened on Monday Night Football last night, Dad, which I think could be summed up best by just saying peak Jameis. Monday Night Football was peak Jameis Winston last night as the Denver Broncos outlast the Cleveland Browns in a shootout, which is not a sentence I thought I'd be saying about this game, where Jameis throws for almost 500 yards, but includes 2 pick sixes in the mix, while Jerry Jeudy enjoys a revenge game that ultimately dies on the vine at the end. Dad, we know this game was always going to be more results-based about the Denver Broncos, a team that right now in the playoff mix in the AFC been one of the great surprises of the season and has a rookie quarterback in Bo Nix, who began the year as polarizing and now has really found himself in a much more comfortable place. What did you make of this Broncos defense somehow allowing Jameis Winston to pass all over them?
I mean, that's where I focused on the game, the Broncos defense, which had been playing extremely well. I mean, it couldn't have been working better for Sean Payton to have a rookie quarterback come along, and he struggled early in the year. There's no doubt about it, but as a rookie normally does. And then he's showing progression as you hope your rookie does. He's following the kind of the path of a rookie quarterback. But it's been the defense that has been keeping this team in the playoffs. They're sitting there at the 7th seed now at 8-5. Bo Nix is finding himself, but the defense has been steady throughout the year. Going into the game, they were one of 3 teams that were giving up under 300 yards a game. I think they were 296. Now they're up to 315. They gave up, 552 yards, 497 in the air. I mean, that was so uncharacteristic of this defense. I'm with you. I did not expect a shootout by either team in this. You mentioned Jerry Jeudy has 235 yards receiving. He has his revenge night, but the Broncos get the win.
The most receiving yards by a player going up against their old team, besting Terrell Owens' old mark. So he got exactly what he was looking for in this one, outside of the W, as he had his fun back and forth with the crowd for a guy who, like anyone else, feels very motivated by that.
And you know, this one was the Browns were in it. I mean, I had done the Browns 10 days ago. We're in Cleveland. They beat Pittsburgh in a snow globe game in the second half, where it was, you know, a 2-loss team against a 2-win team, and Cleveland gets the win 24-19. So they're kind of that team a playoff team doesn't want to play, because you can slip up against them like Pittsburgh did and like Denver almost did, save for the 2 pick sixes, one before the half by Benito, a 71-yarder. And then, you know, Cleveland has the lead halfway through the fourth quarter, 32-31. Denver scores the last 10 points, including a Jaquan McMillan 44-yard pick six, you know, with basically a minute 48 to go, as Cleveland is trying to drive at least for a game-winning field goal attempt. So I did not expect this shootout. And Jameis, listen, the kind of the real Jameis Winston showed up. All the years he had played in started double-digit games, he was in double-digit interceptions, including the 1 year in Tampa where he had 33 touchdowns, 30 interceptions. He has, I think, 180-some touchdowns and over 100 interceptions. He's kind of a feast or famine guy, and it showed up, you know, big time last night. But I still the takeaway from the game for me was the Broncos defense. Hopefully that was an anomaly for them, because they have been playing some really, really good ball, because that would be a bad sign if they start to give up yards like that.
Yeah, the Broncos defense allowing the third fewest yards per play on passes for the entirety of this season. You wonder, too, is Riley Moss the MVP? Like, we talked about the strides that he'd made this season, out for the game last night, and it seemed to at least jar loose some things on the back end of that defense. And so that'll be the question they have to ask going forward. Still was able to pressure Jameis Winston a bunch. They're one of the best pressure teams in the NFL. I believe second in quarterback pressure percentage behind the Los Angeles Rams. And so that portion of the defense still showed up. But, Dad, this to me, you know, I think for the Broncos, it's a similar version of Bo Nix. Had the one nice rip downfield as they traded long, like 70-yard touchdowns between the two teams. Certainly was able to push it deep a lot. Was 2 of 7 on passes over 20 yards, which to me was more, oh my God, they attempted 70 passes of over 20 yards with Bo Nix, who everyone's lauded the progression of, and understandably so. But on the other side, Dad, like, I can't help but look at this, and Troy Aikman waxed poetic about this a bunch on the broadcast, and it's like, man, if Jameis had been the starter from day one, this is probably a team that's flirting with the playoffs. Now, again, we know with Jameis in a big enough sample size, this is exactly what you get. Right. Jameis praying for deliverance from pick sixes at the end of the game is a fool's errand, because this is who he is as an NFL quarterback. He's a chaos agent for bad teams, but at the same time, he throws for just under 500 yards, and as we know, Deshaun Watson in 19 starts over his time back with the Cleveland Browns had never once eclipsed 300 yards. So it's just this constant reminder and this ringing of your ears if you're a Browns fan, or certainly if you're a Browns member of that front office, that you made a mistake that has cost your team in back-to-back years the ability to be competitive from wire to wire, because you keep having to go back to the well on this grand experiment that you just lit money on fire for.
And I mean, listen, Denver will have plenty of time to talk about, because they're up 2 games for the last playoff spot. But for Cleveland, and I mean, how hampered are they next year and the year after? So the next 2 years, Deshaun Watson, each of those years is a $72.9 million cap hit. That's how screwed Cleveland is at the quarterback position. And that is on everybody involved in signing Deshaun Watson to that fully guaranteed deal. It puts them in a position where Jameis Winston is a free agent at the end of the year. He's not going to sign back with Cleveland, right? He would have to take a really friendly deal, because he's showing pretty well right now that he could get maybe some decent money somewhere. Cleveland is going to have to go into the draft, get a quarterback who's on a rookie wage scale, because of the ridiculous contract they have with Deshaun Watson. And while, listen, I don't think anybody could have predicted it going this wrong with Deshaun Watson. Maybe his skills would slip a little bit. He wouldn't be what he was in Houston, but he would still be a decent quarterback. It has gone so wrong for them on play on the field and money-wise, how they're strapped the next 2 years, that I mean, Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry, their hands are going to be tied as far as trying to find a quarterback.
Yep, it's a nightmare, and it's a nightmare they're going to keep on living. And so at the very at least, I guess, the best that we can hope for is that Browns fans continue to get to ride the roller coaster that is Jameis Winston for the remainder of this season there. Again, Jerry Jeudy, 235 yards. Elijah Moore, 111 yards in this game. Anything was available to them in the passing game, provided they could keep Jameis clean for enough time. And you saw the things that made him a top overall pick, the ability to reset his feet on the fly and rip some absolutely insane shots into tight windows in the middle of the field. On the other side, the Broncos, the Bo Nix progression. I mean, a game like this, especially where they were down as much as they were down at certain points, we've seen in the past, they highlighted on Monday Night Football, 7 of Bo Nix's interceptions have come when they've been trailing in games. So when he has to press at times, like a lot of rookies, you find yourself in positions you don't want to be in. And especially for a rookie who, Dad, of the guys that we talk about here, he's maxing out his physical ability, but make no mistake, his physical ability is far less than the other guys that we're talking about in this class in terms of what he can do with the arm, certainly an adept scrambler. And you saw that ability to extend plays on display again last night, but got himself into some interesting spots when you've got to go this high of volume for anyone in their first year of football.
Well, that's what I mean. I mean, the worst stat for him is 35 attempts. You don't want your rookie quarterback throwing the ball 35 times. I know Jameis threw it 58 times, but the Denver had the running game going. They had just over 100 yards, but Bo Nix was just barely above 50% completion through the 2 interceptions, 1 touchdown. That's why they relied on their defense so much, because when they're down and he has to throw, that leads to trouble. But their defense keeps him in games to where, you know, it's you don't have to necessarily throw. You can stick with your game plan. Any rookie throwing 35 times is on a consistent basis is not a good thing.
That being said, Bo Nix has thrown over 35 attempts, a fair amount over the course of this season. So they have relied on him and put him in some shots. And for a guy that came out and was sort of a guy viewed as a short pass merchant in college, really defying that with just how often they're letting him throw deep in this offense. Him and Sean Payton, that relationship will continue to grow and get comfortable. But they get the win last night, and we get the chance to do something that we love around here. Obviously, watching and experiencing a game that felt like a bit of a surprise was a nice little, we'll say appetizer here, but we want to get to the leftovers. Coming off Thanksgiving, we are big, leftovers people. And I know there's a healthy debate going on right now about just what the shelf life of that is. But Jesse, why don't we heat some up since we've got so much time and since we had so much NFL action while we were gone over the holiday break?
Yeah, I'm trying to do the math of like what day it is. It's Tuesday. Thanksgiving was on Thursday. We'll get into this more later, but you guys are gross if you're still eating Thanksgiving leftovers. But let's heat up the leftovers from the NFL weekend. Don't fight me. Just save it. All right, we're going to talk about it more later. We're going to start with the worst 11-1 team in the NFL, maybe of all time, the Chiefs. What's going on? The Raiders were feeling generous with them on Black Friday, gave them a free gift, a fumble at the end, gave them the W. So, I mean, they've clinched a playoff spot. They're 11-1, but how concerned are we about the Chiefs given how they're playing?
Yeah, Dad, I would say mildly as concerned as I've been about the Chiefs in the last few seasons. To Jesse's point, while they are 11-1 and they get the respect that comes with that, especially being 2-time defending champs, they're 6th in ESPN's Football Power Index. They're 12th in FTN's DVOA metric right now overall, and they're a team that just, when you look, the weirdest thing for me with the Chiefs, because defensively they've regressed, like whether it's been some of the departures on that team or what, they're 23rd in pass yards per game allowed, 23rd in EPA per dropback, 27th in sack percentage, and 23rd in quarterback pressure percentage, despite being the 3rd most blitzing team in football. They're blitzing the way that we've seen under Spags, and it's not getting home, and it's putting them in brutal positions on the back end. And on the other side, I know what the pressure and sack stats say because Mahomes helps it out a lot. That left side and Wanye Morris and what's been going on at that left tackle spot, it's just unsustainable. And we joked going into that, hey, the only chance they really got is if Max Crosby breaks this thing wide open. And sure enough, the tackle spots provided enough of an issue to get Mahomes off his spot and to disrupt that offense. And so that's going to continue to be the story. Like, they signed DJ Humphries. We saw him in street clothes, and we might get to see him in pads soon, because why not? The Chiefs have only used 2 different offensive line combinations this year, which is the fewest in football, but they've got to try something because because what's happening on the perimeter right now, you can throw interior 3 stats at me all you want. We see where everyone's loading up and getting pressure, especially inside your own division and inside the AFC. So those are legitimate concerns because, Dad, that's the one thing we saw undo this Kansas City Chiefs organization on the biggest stage was when you couldn't protect Patrick Mahomes on the biggest stage against Tampa in the Super Bowl, the whole house of cards goes kaput.
Yeah, I mean, listen, they've gone from heavily favored to just favored, right? They'll be favored in every game, but you wouldn't be surprised if they lost. I think that's the biggest difference. And you mentioned all the hardships that they have right now. Only 2 O-line combinations, but they're really hurting at that left tackle position. And while the defense has regressed, they're not getting pressure on the quarterback, just 24 sacks, which leads to coverage issues. They are 8th in the league in points allowed, and that's obviously the most important thing. They're giving up less than 20 points a game, and you have an offense that can normally score more than 20 points because of Patrick Mahomes. You got a weapon back in Pacheco, so let's give him time to kind of get his motor running a little bit. Travis Kelce is by far and away the leading receiver because Rashee Rice is out. I think he's 40-some better than Xavier Worthy, who's second. I think Travis has 75 receptions. But it's a team that isn't a dominant team, and we're used to seeing them as a dominant team. Now, is it a matter of other teams caught them? Do they have issues at certain positions, which is costing them? But basically, everything got closer to where they're not considered the best team in football. It was always, well, they're the best team because they have Patrick Mahomes. Well, they're not anymore. And if they lose, you wouldn't be shocked. Where the last couple of years, well, maybe not last year so much, a couple of years before that, if they lost, you would be surprised because of how powerful they are. But they have their issues. There's no doubt about it. And Buffalo is the object in the rearview mirror is closer than it seems. Just one more loss by Kansas City. Buffalo keeps winning. Buffalo hosts. Now, Kansas City proved last year they can go on the road and win. They did in the playoffs. But we know Buffalo is a tough place to play with the snow and the wind and the cold. Not saying Kansas City can't do it, but Buffalo is one loss away by Kansas City of having home field.
All right, Jesse, what's in the rest of the Tupperware we got in the fridge?
Chargers, Minnesota, they keep on winning. Washington bounces back with a big win. Seahawks are in front by a game in the NFC West. So which leftover winning team stood out over the weekend? What do you think?
Yeah, go ahead.
I looked at Washington. I mean, Washington had lost a few in a row. They had kind of fallen. Phillies got the big lead, but Washington, had a really nice performance, put up a lot of points, and kind of caught themselves a little bit from the fall they were in. And when you start to fall from as a rookie quarterback, you wonder if the whole thing's going to unwind a little bit. But it's not. They kind of caught themselves and had a big win and still in a nice playoff position.
Yeah, I would agree. I've been worried mostly with that team about Jaden Daniels' health. I know we've talked about late-stage Cliff Kingsbury at the end of seasons, but to me, a lot of this is about Jaden Daniels hadn't looked comfortable a while and looked decidedly more comfortable there. I would say Minnesota, man, just continues to be a fascinating team. Sam Darnold looked a bit shaky at times, but then found ways to make some big throws under pressure at the end of that game against the Cardinals team that we all agree, pretty good football team. James Conner, Kyler Murray, what they've been able to do in a chaotic NFC West right now. And so Minnesota keeps finding a way to win and is certainly still led by the defense overall. But I did think in a game where I was looking and seeing, all right, this is the Sam Darnold letdown game. This is finally where he's going to cost him one. They're playing against a legitimately talented quarterback on the other side. And Dad, to his credit, he found enough throws near the end of that game to keep them in this and ride the wave of that defense.
Yeah, and then you look at Seattle getting their win over the Jets. We'll talk about Rodgers a little later in the program, but they have a game lead on the Cardinals, who you just talked about, Minnesota. They beat the Cardinals by 23-22. And Seattle and Arizona face off this week in Arizona, a big division game.
Huge one there, as we've been asking the question for weeks now, who wants to win the NFC West? We have not had someone step up and grab this thing, and so we will see if someone can finally take the mantle this weekend in that matchup there. And I don't know, every time I get ready to believe in one of those teams, whether it was the Rams, whether it was the 49ers before all the injury, I'm made to look like an idiot. So I'm going to wait a little while on this one and back away slowly, and instead focus on something comparatively way easier to figure out. who the hell they're going to put in this 12-team playoff in college football. As Jesse mentioned, we had a chaotic weekend. We're going to sort it all out and tell you who the committee is going to fit into those 12 slots coming up tonight. Next on GoJo and Golic.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Jesse Cofield, Mike Golic Jr. and Mike Golic Sr. here with you. And fellas, it all came down to the final game of the regular season for a lot of teams in college football, and a lot of those teams dropped the ball. Let's start with Miami. They had their ticket ready to go to the ACC championship, and then they fall to Syracuse, and they may be falling out of the playoff picture here. How do we feel about this stunning loss by Miami? Also, I saw on social media that the Miami Ibis, the mascot, asked the sideline reporter for Syracuse for her number during the game, and she said no. So just L's across the board.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh,
that's
a big L.
It's a far cry from the beginning of the season. Remember, the season started off with Miami baptizing Florida in the swamp, and then players going over and chirping the recruits that were there to see the Florida Gators, telling them to come on over to Miami, and the recruiting coordinator stuff. It was all going Miami's way for so long until it wasn't. And we saw the signs of this coming throughout most of the season. The Georgia Tech loss happened, and everyone became fully aware. But then this one, Dad, and I heard a very dejected Mike Ryan, our friend and the producer over the Dan Le Batard show yesterday, who struggled to even make a case to keep this team in it, because you had the opportunity, much like Notre Dame and other teams that we're going to talk about, to just win, and you're likely in based on where you had been ranked in the college football playoff. You're a big favorite on the road in the Dome, and Kyle McCord and them boys, Fran Brown, who gets to shower this week, went out and put it on them, coming back from a 21-point deficit. And I think that's, Dad, the most soul-crushing part is you look at a defense that had been so inept at so many different spots this year, could really give it up any way you wanted it, even after getting that 21-point lead spotted to them by the offense at the beginning of that game. And so Miami's probably still going to be inside the top 12. It's going to be them or these 3-loss SEC teams that we're getting the conversation about here. But they've left their fate in the committee's hands completely of their own accord. And if they fall out of the top 12, I won't lose any sleep over it, because this is a team that had the ability to go out with a weak schedule that we said at the beginning of the season, a lot like Notre Dame's, lined up well for a team to be able to go out and make a playoff push. And they decided to say, no, thank you. I'll make this difficult. And so now you play those games and you win these prizes.
Yeah. And honestly, it'll be top 11, right? Because of the other championship games where somebody's going to get in as the 12th seed. So if Miami falls to 12, they're probably going to get bounced out of it.
Yes.
I have a feeling they're going to get dropped out, Mike. I really do, or at least be in position to be overtaken after the conference championship games. And I think will be a valid argument for a 3-loss SEC team over a 2-loss Miami team, because of the way they kind of just been hanging on 2 games, but getting the wins nonetheless, and then the 2 losses. So, I mean, I do think it's going to be difficult for them to stay in now that they're not now they're just hanging around. We talked about Notre Dame hanging around, Tennessee hanging around, Indiana hanging around. They're all going to be in because they're not playing in a game. I think Miami's going to drop too far to where they'll be right on the edge of the cliff or falling off the cliff and taken out.
Yeah, Miami, and it's already started. Like, what you're going to hear in the coming days, everyone out there, is an endless series of propaganda from the various members of these teams, conferences, all trying to jockey for position with their teams. We saw Shane Beamer from South Carolina out jockeying for position among the 3-loss SEC teams, South Carolina, Ole Miss, and Alabama, after their win against Clemson, which was probably one of the better wins of the weekend in terms of Clemson was ranked inside the CFP's top 12 going into that one. Yep. It's a rivalry game. It's an out-of-conference matchup. All these things that tend to be rewarded. You had him going there. You had Lane Kiffin retweeting a bunch of stuff in favor of Ole Miss amongst those 3-loss teams. Now, yesterday, I saw the ACC was making its push. Jim Phillips was out there talking about how 10-2 Miami should absolutely be a top 10 team, and the ACC should have multiple teams into the playoff here now. And Dad, I think that's what really becomes interesting going into this final weekend, where now we've got the conference championship games set up. So in the Big Ten, you're going to have first-year Big Ten member Oregon going up against Penn State, who now has a very real chance to actually win this conference against all odds. In the ACC, you're going to have SMU and Clemson, who finds its way into there because of that Syracuse win over Miami. In the Big 12, you've got Arizona State getting ready to go up against Iowa State in the Big 12. And then in the, who am I missing right now? The SEC, you've got Georgia and Texas, Texas got one of their best wins of the season on the road at Kyle Field against Texas A&M. So you've got all of those teams that the favorites in that game are the ones that we expect to notch their belt. Everyone who's playing in a conference championship game automatically becomes a bubble team. And then there's the teams that are kind of existing in the ether. Ohio State coming off the loss this weekend, still going to be in the field. Indiana with their loss to Ohio State, still going to be in the field. Tennessee, Notre Dame, we all expect to be in that same picture of safe going into conference championship weekend. But then questions of, well, what happens if SMU loses? Where should they fall? Where is Miami going to slot in this? Become, I think, some of the real big topics along with those 3-loss SEC teams.
So let's look at the conference championship games, and let's take the easy ones, the Big Ten and the SEC. All 4 teams are in, correct? Oregon, Penn State. Winners in, obviously, losers in. If Penn State loses that game, they're going to be sitting at 3. They're going to be in. Georgia, Texas. Georgia sitting at 5. If they get a third loss, I still think they're going to be in. Obviously, if Texas were to lose at number 2, they would still be in if Georgia got the automatic bid. And I think it's just as simple with the Big 12. They're only getting 1, right? Iowa State, ASU winner. That's it.
Yep.
Whoever wins is in. Everybody else is out in the Big 12. And then the only real question mark is the ACC. If Clemson wins, obviously they're in. Does SMU drop out? And does Miami fall enough tonight to where they would be on the outside looking in? If SMU, and so there's the slight possibility of 3 from the ACC if Clemson were to win, but I just don't see it. If SMU were to win, obviously Clemson is not getting in. Then it's SMU with the automatic bid, and does Miami. Miami's the team. The team of how far they're going to fall. Are they going to hang out and be around? But I think the other three conferences are dead set. Big Ten, SEC, all four are in, and only one's getting in from the Big 12.
As I often cite on here, strength of resume, how likely it is the average top 25 team will be able to go out against your schedule and accomplish your same resume the way you did. Usually a good predictor for where the committee is going to end up going. And Miami, for what it's worth, dropped to 14th in strength of resume after that loss to Syracuse this weekend. And, Dad, this is going to be a real opportunity we're always looking for what the committee values. It is, do they value the number in your loss column more or the quality of your wins more? Because, again, Miami's only going to have 2 losses, but unless Louisville gets ranked in the top 25 tomorrow night, they're going to have 0 top 25 wins in this penultimate poll for the College Football Playoff Committee, whereas a team like Alabama, while they've got 3 losses, has 3 wins against teams in the top 25 right now. So better wins or more losses when you're separated by only 1 loss. I do think that tie is probably going to go to the winners here as opposed to just a team that was able to lose.
Agreed.
I understand the argument that the ACC fared pretty well out of conference against the SEC this year, but we know the respect the committee seems to have for going out there and having those wins to point to, especially because they're going to have to justify these teams getting into the playoff. And I'm sure even subconsciously, they do want teams they can feel good about going out there that aren't going to embarrass them against quality opponents. So that's going to be part of the debate tonight. And I'm like you, Miami's right on the edge for me. I won't be shocked when they put Alabama in tonight, though. I think largely, again, the field is set with a lot of the teams that we mentioned already: Oregon, Georgia, Texas, Penn State, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Tennessee, Indiana. All are going to be there in the dance. And then the winner of the Big 12 and all of those teams, Boise State still in line to maybe get a first-round bye based on what we've seen so far from them as they get set to take on a ranked UNLV team in the Mountain West Championship this weekend. And so Alabama, because I think it will be Alabama of those 3 lost teams. I know everyone else is jockeying for position, but Alabama's got the wins there to point to. And so I think it's probably going to be them. Being ranked over Miami wouldn't shock me considering what Miami has been doing all season long, which has been playing with fire. The other debate, Jesse, seems to be centered around Notre Dame and Penn State, which I think is pretty interesting going into this final weekend as well.
Yeah, so obviously Notre Dame took care of business against USC, but the question at hand here is how high will their seed be? So James Franklin and Penn State poured it on Maryland late. Here's what he said about why they were running up the score.
I get it, but a couple things I will say. My job is to put the 3s and 4s in the game. But when the 3s and 4s get to go in the game, they get to play football. Those guys deserve to play football. Your 1s are in the game. You were trying to score. We're trying to score. On top of that, you're playing cover 0. If you don't want, play cover 2. So I'm good with it. And on top of that, there's also a change in college football. We are trying to play as long as we can, make the playoffs, and be seeded as high as possible.
So worried about seeding here? Do we think that Notre Dame is going to jump Penn State tonight? What do you guys think?
I'm still of the ilk where I don't think so, Dad, given the respect the committee has shown they have for the Big Ten at large. Now, this was Notre Dame's best win in a while in terms of the quality of opponent. No disrespect to Army, who was ranked at the time that they played, but I think most people look at the talent on USC's roster, a team that had led in the fourth quarter of most of their losses, and say, hey, that's probably still a squad that could give them trouble, as evidenced by the line for that game. But I do think Penn State's still going to be above them, and I do think it's interesting to hear a Power 4 coach actually admit, like, yeah, we understand how we're being judged now. This is one of the first coaches I've heard reference that, because for so long, Dad, remember in the 4-team era, it was, hey, we're not incentivizing blowouts here. Margin of victory doesn't matter, but then they've got this stat called game control and all these things they look at, and it's always been kind of the wink, wink, nod, nod, yeah, it doesn't matter. James Franklin saying, no, we took the message and we know we've got to do this. I completely agree with this take, by the way, that, hey, if I've got my 3s and 4s in and you can't stop it, that's a you problem, not an us problem.
Absolutely right. And he was honest about it. Think what you want about James Franklin, but he was honest about it. The committee does look for big wins, and when you do, and more importantly, as former players, when you have 3s and 4s who are basically show team guys during the week and don't get any burn in the games, and they finally get burned, you don't want to just turn around and hand the ball off. You want to let them play football. And I have zero problem with letting 3s and 4s play football, especially when it's power 4 against power 4. I have no problem with that whatsoever. I don't have a problem with anything that he said. And quite honestly, Mike, I think the committee will take the safe route and keep Penn State in front of Notre Dame, thinking that Penn State's playing in the Big Ten championship game. If they lose, if they lose badly, then they'll drop them behind Notre Dame. So I think they'll just say, we'll keep them up ahead of Notre Dame, no controversy. And if they get blown out or lose by 2 scores in the Big Ten, then we can, again, it's an extra game where Notre Dame is just sitting and watching, and people will have complaints about that as well. Should you drop a team that's playing in a conference championship game behind a team that's not playing? And I think the committee will take the safe route, keep Penn State ahead, and say, if it's a couple of score game, then we feel we have the right to drop Penn State behind Notre Dame. And it's an important distinction, because that's going to be basically for the 5th seed. That's going to be basically for the highest seed outside of the locked 1 through 4. So 5 would play 12. So that will be interesting. But I think they'll keep Penn State ahead of Notre Dame at least until the results of the Big Ten title game.
I would agree. Penn State blew out that Maryland team as expected there. Notre Dame, that was a closer game than the final score indicates against USC. Those back-to-back pick sixes really changed a lot of the math there. And so I don't know if that'll be enough for them to jump. I kind of think the committee can sort of fudge it either way they want. If they wanted to flip Notre Dame and Penn State now, and then Penn State goes out and performs well even in a loss in the Big Ten championship, they can position it the way that so many coaches and conference heads have tried to do it, which is, hey, making the championship's got to be our reward. Well, Penn State plays well, and then they jump Notre Dame in that final rankings because they played an extra game. It would certainly send that message. So I think they're fine there, and I think you're right. That 5 seed is going to be the coveted spot right now. I still think having a first-round bye is better, but I understand the appeal of the 5 seed given what we know. So I think tonight, we're going to get Oregon, Texas, SMU, and Boise State in those top 4 seeds. I think Penn State will be the 5th seed, followed by Notre Dame, Georgia, Ohio State, Tennessee, IU, and then I think Alabama gets in at the 11th seed, and if you had Miami in at 12, they would be bumped by ASU, who would be the Big 12 champion on paper as of right now. So I think that'll be your bracket going into tonight. We'll wait and see. Get to break it all down tomorrow, and the chaos in college football is never ending. We will get to more of that and some Heisman talk coming up next here on GoJo and Golic.
back to GoJo and Golic. So conference championship games clinched this weekend in college football. Also likely the Heisman Trophy. Here's Deion Sanders on his two-way star making a case for him.
I think Travis clinched the Heisman. Thank you, God, for stopping me. Because I almost said something. I think Travis clinched the Heisman with his performance. I think he made a lot of people aware of how ignorant there was with the Thorpe. His performance today, what he had, 3 touchdowns, 100 yards, and an interception.
And 2 PBUs. Yeah.
And 2 passes broken up. He should have had another pick. Hit him right in the darn chest. I'm not happy about that, but I'm happy with him. But it's phenomenal. I think Shador proved that he should be right beside him.
All right, Deion making his case. What do you think? Did Travis Hunter wrap it up?
Yeah, it's a great time to have this conversation today as the Heisman ballots officially opened yesterday and everyone got their emails. And by everyone, I mean me, because somehow I'm still a Heisman voter. So obviously can't give away the goose on this one in terms of who I'm actually going to vote for or anything like that. But Dad, we know what the race has really been for the majority of this year. There was that brief period, and I still think Cam Ward was penalized far too much by people for Miami's loss to Georgia Tech and the way that he was legislated in this conversation. And I'll be curious to see what the final vote's going to reflect in that, because he is a player that has been so singular in how effective he has been at that position this year. There are other very good players, Dylan Gabriel, a lot of the quarterbacks that we've talked about, but Cam Ward, that offense is, hey, we've got a big meat slab up front that's really good at protecting, but we've got a quarterback that's got a howitzer and is incredibly mobile and can put the ball anywhere on the field. And so we can sit here and throw deep on almost every play because of it. He changes the math completely, which is what a Heisman level player is supposed to do, change the math in their team's favor. But it seems like it's still been a 2-horse race between Travis Hunter and Ashton Jeanty.
Yeah, Cam Ward's not going to win the Heisman, but he'll be repaid by being a high draft pick in the NFL and make up for it money-wise. He just won't have the trophy to hold, because I agree. He saved them from the fire pit on more than a few occasions with his play. He's second in the country in yards passing, first in touchdowns, 36 touchdowns to just 7 interceptions. He's had a phenomenal year. And he's done playing. Jeanty, who is the second in odds, still has a game against UNLV. And Dylan Gabriel, who I think is third in the odds, he still obviously has a game. And Travis Hunter is done. He and Shador, who I think is fourth in the odds right now, they're both done. But I definitely think this is Travis Hunter's award. I know you have a vote. I obviously not going to ask you who you're going to vote for, but I have a feeling I would know. I think Travis Hunter is going to be a runaway, not just a winner, but I think a runaway winner in this, just because he had such a special year receiving the ball and playing defense, and we just haven't seen somebody dominate on both sides of the ball in a long time, if ever, the way he has dominated on both sides of the ball. And as we said, and I do think Cam Ward got penalized for the losses and kind of just hanging on for some of the wins, because if Dylan Gabriel, who was the only undefeated team leading Oregon, had those kind of numbers, second in the country in passing yards, first in touchdowns, he may be the favorite, because that's kind of how it works sometimes. But I think Travis Hunter had such an incredible year in something we don't see, that I would be stunned if he isn't the Heisman Trophy winner, and deservedly so.
Yeah, so are the odds here, as you're seeing on the screen for DraftKings Sportsbook. Travis Hunter, a minus 8,000 favorite right now to win the Heisman among the field of 4 they have left on the board there. Ashton Jeanty, the next closest, at plus 1,800. So, Dad, I think you might be right. I'm hoping that it'll be a little bit more even, just because what Ashton Jeanty has done this year has been so special. Again, we're talking about Boise State potentially getting a first-round bye in the college football playoff because of the work that that young man's done. And to be clear, like, he's not the only person on that team. Boise State is, I believe, second in the country behind just Ole Miss in terms of total sacks on defense. That unit's performed really well. Maddox Madsen, who won the job out of camp in the way a lot of people didn't think he would, has been a great value add at quarterback. So all of those parts of the team deserve a lot of credit. But we know they're not where they are without Ashton Jeanty. And so I do think that part of it, and I always wondered how that would factor in, Dad. Again, the voting opens up now but goes on through this weekend. I wondered how much that factor of it, the fact that Boise State has been in the playoff conversation since the jump, would factor into the Heisman Trophy outcome, just because so often we have pointed out that it tends to go to the best player and usually the best quarterback on one of the best teams in the sport. And so should that not extend some to a guy playing running back, I do think there might be some people that will look at that and certainly take stock at what he's done. I mean, the overwhelming rushing leader in almost every category in the NCAA, and I know playing in the Mountain West, but always going to have that Oregon performance to point back to, as the Ducks have been almost wire-to-wire #1 since.
And he's fifth all time as far as single season. Barry Sanders continues to be #1 at over 2,600 yards, and Melvin Gordon just under 2,600. Kevin Smith 2567. Marcus Allen 2342, and Jeanty has 2288. And they now count on when those other guys played. Or when some of those other guys played, like Barry Sanders and Marcus Allen, they didn't count bowl games. And now bowl games are counted. So you get that extra game to count toward your rushing totals. He's had a great year, 28 rushing touchdowns. You can't deny the greatness of what he's done. But I think it's just such an oddity what Travis Hunter has done on both sides of the ball, that it's enough away from the norm of over 2,000 yards rushing, a ton of yards passing, and a ton of touchdowns, that someone goes both ways and dominating both ways, that I think they win the Heisman.
Yeah, special season. I mean, the fact that we have gotten to have a season where we're talking about a two-way player and a running back as the forefront for the Heisman is so unique in modern college football, and something that I really feel like we are blessed to be a part of there. I said it's like in baseball seeing Shohei Ohtani and Aaron Judge win MVP of their respective league. One guy doing something that's been such a part of the history of the game, hitting home runs, playing running back at a level we haven't seen in quite some time. And the other in Shohei Ohtani and Travis Hunter as two-way stars doing things the likes of which that we have never seen. So special stuff there. As you pointed out, Dad, Colorado, huge win against Oklahoma State, who you want to talk about some weird retrospect piece that's going to get done this year.
Wow.
Oklahoma State bringing back one of the most experienced rosters in the sport, and I think maybe the most experienced offensive line in the sport. And Ollie Gordon, who was expected to be a Heisman hopeful at running back after finishing, I think, 7th in the Heisman voting last year, just completely bottoms out. They go winless in the Big 12 this season, including a 52-0 blanking by Colorado this weekend. But ultimately, it is Arizona State and Kenny Dillingham, man, getting it done. Them and Iowa State will face off. Iowa State was in that pole position for a lot of the year in the Big 12 before they slipped up. But Kenny Dillingham, that's another one. Awesome story out of this season for a team that, remember, in training camp last year, got the news that coming off the investigation and everything that went on during COVID under Herm Edwards, they were going to be banned from bowl participation and accept that for the 2023 season. To now come out in 2024 and look like a team led by Cam Scatabo that now could likely be the Big 12 representative in the college football playoff is one of the more incredible turnarounds in the sport. So very cool to see that for them, emblematic of so much of that Big 12 chaos. Jesse, we know the other interesting part of this, though, and we talked about it some with Ashton Jeanty, is the group of five's role in all of this, because right now it's been basically just them, but going into this weekend, UNLV and some others maybe on the outside looking in, hoping for something to happen.
Yeah, a lot of answers, going to come out tonight after the rankings are released. But SMU and Indiana, do you guys think they're in? And which 3-loss SEC team has the best shot here? What do you guys think as we try to look into our crystal ball? And obviously we talked about this a little bit, but go into some more detail for us.
Yeah, Dad, so it's interesting right now looking at the odds to make the playoff on DraftKings Sportsbook here. In the last 48 hours, the majority of the handle has gone on SMU and then Alabama, followed by Miami, South Carolina, and then Ole Miss after that. By total bets, it's been Alabama and Miami, followed by South Carolina, SMU, and Ole Miss. And I tend to look, Dad, at the handle on this one and say that they've probably got it right, mostly because I think SMU is a good chance to beat Clemson in the ACC championship and secure their space there. If they were to lose, I think this is the shining example of, hey, you made it to the conference championship weekend. Can this be seen as something that's used against you? And I think that's why Jim Phillips and company, the commissioner of the ACC, have been so proactive in getting out in front of this now, because they believe, hey, if Clemson wins, they should get in, but there's no reason that SMU should drop considering their only other loss. And I think this is the most valid point that Jim Phillips brought up, which is so many people have pointed to, well, when a team makes a change at quarterback, the human committee is supposed to take that into account. And we know for SMU, during the BYU game was when the shift started to happen for them to get to Jennings, where now they've been so great the rest of the season, that being their lone loss and it being out of conference. And I think they've got a valid point there, Dad. I think SMU should be one of those teams that if they were to lose on conference championship weekend would have a very valid claim of still being involved in this.
Yeah, I do think that's one of the big questions if SMU loses to Clemson, because Clemson would probably be the lowest seeded. And they could actually, Clemson could actually, if they beat SMU and SMU stays in it, Clemson would go to 12. Clemson could actually knock out Miami, depending on how low Miami falls. If Miami's sitting at number 12, Clemson could knock them out. And while they're being the ACC rep, which would be wild. So, but I think those are the biggest questions. Where is Miami tonight? And if SMU loses, does SMU stay in? And could you get 2 3-loss SEC teams in? If Georgia loses to Texas, Georgia's probably going to stay in at 3 losses. And then does Alabama make it in with 3 losses? So there's still a few big questions out there.
Yeah, and that's one of those, and it's different for different teams, right? When you look at the strength of schedule and the conversations we have around Georgia and company, where I've largely looked at conference championship weekend, Dad, sort of like the stats from the play-in game in the NBA where they don't actually count towards any sort of total. I kind of look at conference championship losses that way, and I'll be curious to see if the committee reflects that, where, hey, outside of circumstances where you're blown off the field so thoroughly that it's going to be hard for anyone to get that out of their craw. And again, I brought this up yesterday when we were talking to Jesse Palmer. This is the only weekend that the College Football Playoff Committee is all together watching games. Usually they fly in and convene in that big old hotel in Texas and they had that conversation in the room. This one, they're sitting around and they watch Conference Championship weekend together. So the discussions that would normally happen in that room happening a little more in real time. I think the impression that your team makes on Conference Championship is pretty important in terms of what it's going to leave in the mouth of the committee. But that was in the 14 playoff era. In the 12-team playoff era, Dad, I do think now getting to your conference championship, that has to count for something in terms of a reward. And I think you've got to almost have the detriment that could come with losing in order to keep incentivizing teams to want to be in that conference title.
So, again, I think that 2 of the biggest teams involved in that is SMU and Penn State. As we talked about in the last segment, if Penn State were to lose, do they drop behind Notre Dame and lose that all-important 5th seed and go to a 6th seed? And if SMU loses to Clemson, do they actually fall out of the playoffs? So it will be interesting because it is the first year with this style of how much a team losing in a conference game is penalized. And I think, obviously, you have to look at how they lose. If it's a close game, obviously they're not going to drop much. If it's a blowout, they could drop much. But how fair is it while teams like Tennessee and Indiana and Ohio State and Notre Dame are just sitting around watching and really can only move up possibly in spots as conference losers if they get blown out, maybe fall. So this is a big test for the committee.
Yeah, SMU 8th in the current AP poll, 9th in last week's college football playoff poll. And man, looking at this, it's going to be that is going to be the real test for the committee, because I could absolutely see a world if this Clemson team now walking in with already 3 losses goes and does damage to SMU in this game. all of a sudden SMU sitting there at 8th or 9th could find its way into that danger zone of the 12 spot where things get real weird and you could get knocked out. So I don't think safe by any means with a loss, even if theoretically they should be, given the way that this is all supposed to be structured. So plenty of answers that we need that we'll find out tonight. Coming up next, we'll get to Charlotte Wilder and some spicy hot leftover Thanksgiving takes next on GoJo and Golic.
Okay, the age-old debate, as we are a week removed from Thanksgiving, almost, about leftovers. Golix, I know you have a really strong opinion on this. We have a reminder here from the internet.
Some of y'all might want to write this down, because I'm finna give you the calendar and the itinerary for these leftovers. You cooked the food on Wednesday night. Thursday, you ate the food. Friday, that's when it was its best. Saturday, you're pushing it. Sunday, ain't no more leftovers. Monday, you tripping. Tuesday, your ass getting worms if you still eating them leftovers. Wednesday, hospital. Thursday, dead. That's just the bottom line for these leftovers.
All right, Charlotte Wilder joins us next. Nobody eat your Thanksgiving leftovers tomorrow unless you want to end up in the hospital.
All right, hour number 2 of GoJo and Golic here. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., and Jesse Cofield. And as we often do on a Tuesday, we're joined by our good friend and the co-host of Oddball with Amin El Hassan every day but Friday here on the DraftKings Network. Her name is Charlotte Wilder for a Charlotte Wilder Wednesday on a Tuesday. Charlotte, how we doing, bud? Good to see you.
Oh, I am fantastic. All the better for seeing you guys. Is it just me, or do you feel like this week sports has sort of exploded? Like I can't. There's too much. There's too much to talk about, which is the greatest gift the content gods ever could have given us.
It really was, and we've got that backlog of Thanksgiving sports take for a lot of people that were off at the end of last week. So we've got a good log jam, which is perfect for us here. We've been enjoying the football portion of that all day so far. Charlotte, we want to get to some of the basketball portion with you, especially what's going on with LeBron James and the Lakers. Only 10 points last night, an historic shooting slump that he's on from behind the arc right now as they search for answers in the midseason here. But I am curious for you, Charlotte, what Thanksgiving is like for the Wilder household. I know on this show we've got so many varying tastes and takes when it comes to food between us and Jesse and everyone else involved here. Where do you fall on the spectrum? Like, paint me a picture of what the Wilder Thanksgiving looks like over the weekend.
Oh man, the Wilder Thanksgiving is one of my favorite, probably my favorite holiday, because we go to my aunt and uncles who are a town over from my parents outside of Boston, and all of my cousins from all over the country come in, and my aunts and uncles, and they have this amazing the ability to spread this massive table out. It's like a Mary Poppins table, bag, but table. And my cousin is an unbelievable cook and basically like high-end caters the whole thing herself. And my in-laws came this year and everyone had an absolutely wonderful time. And then the day after, I mean, this is like gross saying this. It's so wholesome. We all sing Christmas carols because my family, except for me, is very musical. And it's just, it's like a little bit of heaven in a sea of whatever else this is.
You guys do sound like a bit of a Hallmark movie. This is adorable. Yeah. All of that sounds like here. And actually the perfect segue into what we were just discussing before, because right before you came on, Charlotte, we played a clip from Plies, who is simultaneously a rapper I associate from my childhood and a deeply online college football fan and former college football player. And he had to take about leftovers and the timeline that you should be eating them on coming off of Thanksgiving. You just had, it sounds like, a delicious meal that anyone would want to take a leftover box from. Like, I hope they had to-go boxes ready to go for people that weren't staying at the house there. What is your rule on leftovers, especially ones as good as it sounds like you had?
Well, so the great thing about Friday for us is, we have the Thursday Thanksgiving and then Fridays that we get to have leftovers, but you can make a sandwich. You can do whatever you want with it as dinner. There are other things that my cousin will bring out. So that's like a dedicated leftover day in a way that sometimes if you have Thanksgiving somewhere else, you don't get those leftovers the next day. And you're like, well, what am I supposed to eat on Friday? But leftovers in general, I don't know. I feel like I end up wasting so much food because I'll be like, yeah, I'll definitely eat this. And then if I don't eat something the day after, I actually have a real problem. We need to come up for a name with this, guys. If leftovers sit in a container for more than 3 days, I get scared of them in the fridge and I don't want to deal with them. And I make my husband take them out, but then it's just obnoxious because I have like 5 Tupperwares that I'm scared, that I literally am scared of, which I mean, this is embarrassing. Everything I've said so far since joining the show has been too earnest and either earnest or embarrassing.
It's not embarrassing. It's very normal. Very normal that you don't want to eat the
thing about
food.
it is, and we're going to disagree with Jesse on this. As far as leftovers, I have 2 things. First, leftovers can last as long as they look and smell fine. I mean, what the hell? I mean, if it looks good and still smells good, heat it up and friggin' eat it. Now, that being said, leftovers in a Golic house don't last more than a few days. We just go through it. So that's the thing. It's never going to get to that point, Jesse, of waiting too long, because the leftovers are eaten within 2 days. They are eaten and they are gone. Charlotte, what I'm wondering, sounds like you had a big gathering. At a big gathering like that, are there seating arrangements, or is it sit where you want?
I'm so glad you asked, Senior. Yes, they make these beautiful little place cards, and it is so nice because you don't have to do the whole dance of, oh, where am I going to sit? Who do I want to avoid? And luckily, there's no one I want to avoid. So it's sort of like you don't have to think about it. But I don't know if that's normal. Do you guys do seating arrange? What's the standard? I mean, I guess after over like 12 people, maybe even over 10 people, I feel like you kind of have to do seating arrangements because otherwise, like someone ends up on an island and it's awkward and you know what I mean?
We have like the kids table and the adults table, and like we're
Sure.
still at the kids table. Like the kids
Nice.
table is just everyone who basically is not, I mean, I guess, I don't know how to say this. I'm an adult. The adults sit at a different table, and then it's kind of a free-for-all at the kids table. So like my in-laws, my husband's aunt and uncle, like they sat at the dining room table, and then the rest of us, the kids, along with our children, sat at the kids
Your
table.
children?
Yeah, my kids.
But I think that's about the group that you're with. Like it's the
Yeah.
context of if you are relative to the rest of that group, the kids, like my family, the Perianos that we've done, various holidays with, but usually Christmas with, we're all adult children now, but we'd still relative to that situation be the kids. Whereas I did Thanksgiving with a group of friends out here this year, and so I was at the adult table amongst equals in that context. So it is weird like that. In certain holidays, if you're around the right family or the right people, you become the kids again, no matter what you are, which is oddly freeing because that usually means I don't have to do a damn thing for all this, and I'm much more comfortable that way. I'm a passenger princess for these holidays.
Yeah,
That's
but
the best.
you should, because you're right. When it is Thanksgiving with the Perianos, we usually, the adults sit at one end together and the kids just kind of go the rest of the table. But that doesn't mean you should just sit around like a free ride. I mean, you got to help clear the table and things like that. Now, we are getting to a point where I have 2 grandkids, about to have a third. Jenny is about to have a baby in, a couple of days. So we are getting to the point where if we are all together, we will have a kids table. So that we will kind of revert back to that. But Mike, why are you looking at me like you shouldn't help clear a table?
Wait, but Senior, before you get to Mike, is it going to be like a Russian nesting doll situation? There's like the adult table, the medium kids table, and then like a tiny table for the tiny kids? We're just
I
going,
think those are just height chairs.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
or no, they make
I
the
know
little.
what you're talking about, Jesse.
Yeah, they make the little tables for toddlers.
Yeah, those tiny
Yeah,
little ones.
I think it'll definitely go down the line, and you'll put the parents next to their kids. So as the grandparents, we're not stuck feeding the kids. Let the parents do that. The grandparents are there for the fun stuff.
Yeah.
Those tiny tables are fun because you can pretend you're in Billy Madison. Like your knees
yeah.
come up to your chest, and it's a
And your
it's really
toddler
nice.
will
No,
make
I
you
see-
sit at them. So
I'm gonna back up Gojo for a second here because I do think sometimes people who are lovely people want to help, but but for those people, it's like the guest defines the host. Like you need some people to just keep sitting there and be a great guest and talk to the other people at the table. Whereas like if you have a system, you know how to clear the table, you know what's going on, you know when to bring the other stuff out. So I actually think, Gojo, you might have done everybody a real big favor by simply being that passenger princess at Thanksgiving.
We all play our roles in here, and when it comes to the like nuts and bolts stuff there, like Dad talked about, my advice remains the same. Just show up in the picture. You don't have to clear that much. Just clear one plate or act like it. Ask if you can do anything to help. You're going to be told
Ask.
no
Always
based on
ask.
your role in the
Yes.
hierarchy here. And then once you are told no, you comfortably go back to the conversation. You do the things that come naturally to you, and we are all better for it. So, again, Thanksgiving politics. These are the good ones to talk about here, and they're important. And with leftovers, I agree with Dad. Hey, ultimately, if you're built different like us, those leftovers aren't going to last anywhere near the expiration date. I appreciate Plies' concern, but they are not valid here in this household here. Concerns, Jesse, are what I have for the Los Angeles Lakers right now. Why don't we get into some of that with Charlotte here? Because it's getting kind of weird as we're just far enough into the season to start drawing conclusions.
sheesh. Yeah, Charlotte, we know you're ready to talk about this. Basically, LeBron held to 10 points last night. Not great. He is in a historic shooting slump. Are we finally starting to see his age catch up to him here?
Oh God, guys, this makes me so sad because it felt like I think a part of me truly believed that LeBron James would play until he was no longer on this earth, and he would play at a high level until he was no longer on this earth. Like, this man, I don't want, like, even right now where we're seeing this historic slump, the plus minus, when the minus when he's been on the floor is nothing we've ever seen before from LeBron. He even had said, I feel off rhythm, and I still am not going to say, like, oh yeah, we're seeing the end, because I fully believe that this is a guy who could come back in next season or maybe 2 months and all of a sudden start playing like he is an MVP candidate. That said, I do think at some point you are going to start seeing age catch up to people. And I'm almost flabbergasted. You know what I mean? Where I can't believe that this could be what is happening here, Gojo.
Yeah, and LeBron, so 0 for 4 from 3 last night against the Wolves. Now 0 for 19 from deep in his last 4 games. It's the worst he's shot from 3 since he missed 24 straight back in December of 2003, according to ESPN research. So we're going back to rookie LeBron to find the worst performances on par with this season. And Dad, I will say it's hard for me to get worked up right now because we're not that far removed from LeBron being the example JJ Redick was pointing to at the beginning of the season of the effort he wasn't getting from the younger players on this roster as LeBron notched some unbelievable stuff. But kind of like we saw last year after they made the run in the in-season tournament where they hit that little bit of a lull, we've got a big enough sample size to know with LeBron, when the conversation starts popping up about 82 games and should LeBron play them or not, we've been doing this for years now. He is old. He's going to go through patches like this where the production slows down. I think the difference now, Dad, is as he gets to 40 years old, those lulls are going to dip lower than we've seen in some time. It's not just going to be him coasting by with high-end 20-point double-doubles instead of triple-doubles. It's going to be valleys like this, knowing that there are still peaks left in this season. I fully agree with Charlotte like that.
Well, I mean, listen, this generation has been ripped for game management, right? For managing your bodies, for taking games off. And the old guard talks about we used to play 82 all the time. LeBron's played every game. They played 21 games. He's played them all. But even the old school guys, you're not talking about a guy who's going to be 40 in less than a month. At the end of December, he's going to be 40 of playing 82 games. Just not going to happen. I mean, at some point, Charlotte, he's going to need to take a rest. I mean, 0 of 19 for the last 4 games from three-point land. He's going to need a break. We're in unprecedented waters with him in basically every category of how good he is for how old he is. But Father Time always wins. Always wins. So I think for him, even though he won't want to manage his time, he's just going to want to show I can push through it. He's going to have to.
Well, I think it's that last part where JJ saying, look at LeBron for effort. I imagine if you're LeBron, you don't want to not show effort. You don't want to all of a sudden have to sit games out. You don't want to not be that example. But this is also a guy who had 4 triple doubles in a row last month. So I'm not too concerned if you're doing that 1 month and then, Aaron Judge didn't hit a home run until the 4th game, 5th game, and he's in the prime of his career. Like, people go through slumps. This happens. I think what is so strange is that, first of all, we haven't seen LeBron go through a slump like this, especially, as Mike said, since his rookie year. So you're like, well, something must be up. And then you're like, what could it be? And you're like, oh, he's almost 40. So it's hard to sort of, as you said, there's no metric for this. We don't know how to measure this man right now. And I think we just kind of have to be patient to see where it all ends up netting out.
Yeah, LeBron James, 6 straight games shooting below 45%. To me, sounds like legs. I mean, hell, we're fresh off the Jake Paul Tyson fight where we watched a damn near 60-year-old man wander around there on pogo sticks. Like, the legs eventually start to go a little bit. It's a long season, not worried a ton, but this is what's going to happen. The key now for them is avoid injury because you need him to stay healthy and available, even if it's at a little bit of a lesser level right now. We'll be back in a minute here on GoJo Golic.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. So, a lot of boys being boys in the worst way this past weekend. Talk about being dramatic. Fights in college football because someone put a flag with one logo on top of another logo that was different than their logo. Flag planting. Okay, come on. Baker Mayfield, who had one of the most memorable flag plants of all time, he was asked about it on Sunday, and here's what he had to say.
Many kind of consider you the OG when it comes to flag planting. What was your reaction to a lot of the flag planting we saw yesterday, and I guess maybe some of the pushback to that flag planting yesterday?
There were like 4, weren't there?
You know what, I'll say this. That OU Texas does it every time they play. It's not anything special. You take your L and you move on. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
I mean, we talked about this a lot yesterday. Charlotte, are men too emotional to lead, blah, blah, blah. But what is your take on this whole situation?
So, okay, if you lose a football game and someone wants to plant their flag on your field after you lost at home, what do you think's going to happen? Like, you just lost. If you didn't want them to plant a flag, you should have won the game. I just feel like my time in college football, when I went to all of these incredible campuses, the best part of it was the regionality. The best part of it was how much people care. The best part of it was the rivalries. And it's a sport that we're losing those very quickly. We're losing recipes. We're losing rivalries. Like, this is the stuff that I think is so special to college football. This is what I love about it so much. I think conference realignment has already decimated so many rivalries that used to be the thing that everybody looked forward to. And so the fact that we have people who care so much about Michigan and Ohio State playing each other, that these players, you know, in an age of the transfer portal where you can leave, you don't necessarily have to feel that much allegiance. It's obviously becoming more professionalized. We don't see a ton of regionality in the NFL. I think that these moments where you really feel the heat of how much people care about beating, you know, the school up north or whatever, even though they didn't and it was the opposite. I have a hard time getting worked up over it. What I don't think is great is when people end up getting pepper sprayed or when people end up punching each other, which happened on some level. Though the passion from the other team not wanting that team to plant their flag on the logo is also very exciting to me. I think there just has to be, you know, it's a loss of perspective when things get this out of control. It's people, you got to step back and be like, this is a piece of fabric and this is a bunch of paint on our field, and I've got to, you know, like, but at the same time, what can you expect? So the thought of
I was going to say, Charlotte, that's the tough part is when you want the passion like that. And we run into this all the time with football in general because it's a sport where you are in controlled chaos the entire time you're between those lines. It is an incredibly violent gladiator sport that also still has lines that we all sort of observe in terms of what we will and won't do to our opponent in terms of that violence, and how you draw those lines is always pretty difficult. And so when you've got that passion that we all want, and Charlotte, I had not thought of it in that way, but Dad, it is kind of reassuring in a day and age for so many people who think, man, as fans now, I am less familiar with the players on my team year to year because the rosters change so much. So many of these players are coming in here more as mercenaries maybe than ever before here now. Will they care as much about my thing as possible before? And the answer over this weekend still seemed to be a resounding yes in certain ways.
I never thought that was going to be a problem because fans root for the laundry. They don't root for the person. You know,
I'm not talking about the fans. I'm talking about the players and their reaction being indicative of those players still cared enough about that rivalry game to go out there and get into a fist fight with the other team over the notion of the flag being planted in their field. I'm not saying the fans have any difference or would change their approach. I'm saying the players' approach to how they view these rivalry games maybe being a little more subdued because so many of them don't have as many years. The Ohio State-Michigan game might be an exception because so many of those Ohio State players came back with, you know, NIL dollars in their pockets, but also the idea of we want to win a national title, we want to beat the Big Ten, we want to beat Michigan. And so that one might be a little different, but some of these other ones maybe so.
What we don't know is who's getting in the fight. Are the people that's starting the fight, not just in Michigan, Ohio State, but the 4 or 5 other flag planting fights that we had, are they players who have been on that team for years and then the portal guys just kind of jump in because they're defending their teammate? That's what we don't know. It still could be the players that have been on the team for 2, 3, 4 years. And listen, Charlotte, I get what you're saying. It's a flag. It's a logo planted in another logo. But you're dealing with 18 to 22-year-old testosterone-filled guys. They're going to react in a negative. They're going to react in a negative way. So it's a shame, but you just have to stop the flag planting. And it's just going to lead to something else. It's just going to lead to guys going on the logo at the 50-yard line and scuffing it up with their cleats. There's always going to find a way to demean the other team's team and or logo. And it's just going to be up to the adults in the room of how they're going to monitor it. I have said from the beginning, I said, do you need pepper spray? I mean, there have been plenty of flag planting fights over the years where there's never been pepper spray, and now all of a sudden there was pepper spray. So I was a little surprised at that. But the bottom line is, going forward, what do you do to stop it? Because the adults in the room have to step in and do something, because it wasn't just Ohio State, Michigan. It was plenty of other places as well.
Yeah, I mean, Arizona State, they planted the pitchfork. Like, it wasn't even a flag. It was like, I guess my feeling
would that
about
fall
this,
under the flag ban? Because that's just its own brand of weapon that belongs to the mascot.
Exactly. Like, I think also I stand by the idea that Ohio State is one of the scariest places I've ever been in my life. That stadium, there is a like gothic energy there that I think it's very brave of Michigan to try to plant the flag at Ohio State, because I certainly wouldn't do that. I think though that I don't quite understand why this weekend everything exploded quite as much as it did when we've had flag planting for so long. And also, like, when Baker Mayfield did this in 2017 at the OU Oklahoma State game, there was a lot of pearl clutching. Like, people were really, really upset. It was like the most offensive thing people had ever seen. And then did everybody kind of get over it? And then this past weekend, everything just exploded. I don't know how you, without a governing body of the NCAA that can make these sweeping rules, like, does every school have to individually ban flag planting? Like, it just feels a little messy to me. And I would be surprised if you don't find another, like, okay, we'll just plant, the drumstick from one of the band members. Like, there isn't
the conference commissioner. The conference commissioner, they can lay down a law in their conference if they want to. But yeah, like I said, players will just find something else to piss off the team they just beat. So it's not like, okay, if they outlaw flag planting, they'll do something else. And so I mean, I don't fully know the answer to this.
I mean, the answer is people just got to act right. To Charlotte's point, when the Baker Mayfield flag planting happened, I don't remember a brawl. It was more sanctimony. It was the pearl clutching based on, oh, how would you show up a rival in this way? The same people clutch pearls when someone shows someone up at the end of a great play. With this now, it spilled over into violence, and that's the difference, is you got to prove you can handle these things, and so many of these teams showed, hey, we cannot reasonably handle these things, and so now it's got to get taken away, and I understand why that's got to happen. And so I don't know if part of that's generational. I'm sure there's some people that think some of this is always a clout grab and the things that have become associated with a generation so tied to what this can happen if a moment goes viral. But the bottom line is it's going to go away. The passion is still all there, and it's just got to find more productive and civil ways of leaking out. Because, Charlotte, you brought it up, and Jesse, I think we've got footage yesterday from Lucy Rodine and the Dan Le Batard show. Lucy's obviously travels around all the big games of the weekend there, and actually her and one of the people with them there from the show got like ancillary pepper sprayed or something.
Yeah. We have, check out the video.
They pepper sprayed them.
Oh no.
Oh my God, they pepper sprayed them. All right, little check-in. As you may know, I got pepper spray, but now I'm fine. I do not recommend getting pepper spray. It hurts. But I'm fine. Thank you for asking, everybody. Yeah, good luck, pepper spray, bringing her down. I laughed a lot.
I laughed a lot. It's milk, right? You're supposed to pour milk on it because water makes it worse.
I don't think there's much milk readily available.
Yeah, that is true.
I've never been.
I mean, Under the prior administration with Jim Harbaugh, there would have been milk readily available down on the field for Michigan players to use in this instance. So one of the many areas they might miss him in there. But so that was Lucy's producer, Rose, that ended up getting some of the pepper spray mixed in. And the weirdest thing to me, like the whole thing, again, we've seen a million fights. Dad, you and I have been a part of a bunch of fights on the field during, before, after games. And I've never once seen anyone pepper sprayed or even entertained the thought that that might come up here. And again, I called the Michigan State tunnel fight game, and no one I heard got pepper sprayed in the midst of that. And so in a situation like this where we saw so much footage out there, Charlotte, of players looking like at that point had been subdued. I saw an officer had been down on the ground. They were trying to get him up, but then things had calmed down and all of a sudden the pepper spray popped off. To me, seemed like someone that acted in haste and maybe would probably, I would hope, want that moment back right now. I know they're kind of investigating that, but that to me seemed incredibly unnecessary and only escalated a situation that was already bad.
Oh, yeah. Huge line to cross, in my opinion. Rose is amazing. I'm glad she's okay. I think that the violence we saw here was, it felt like the pepper spray felt like desperation to me, because I think that the hardest fight in the world to stop is between 50 men on either side who are much stronger than anybody else around them and younger. So I feel like it must have been we've lost control of the situation. We don't know what to do, belatedly. Like, it didn't happen. Everything was sort of, as you said, calming down. I know. I understand the need to take this away. You can't plant flags because what happened. I do think it's, I guess, maybe it sounds callous in light of the fact that people actually got hurt. But the fact that these rivalries made people so got people so jacked up and were so intense about it. There is something there that I think maybe if there's a silver lining, that's what it is. I also think that these days this is something that can the term going viral is because viruses are airborne and you can't really stop them. And I think in this situation, this is something where maybe a couple years ago, many years ago, maybe even a couple, where TikTok might not have been as prevalent, or the things might not have spread quite as quickly in terms of maybe I should try this. You know what I mean? It's like the milk crate challenge or all those dumb things where everybody was hurting themselves because they were trying to do these videos they saw. The flag planting almost it just like swept the nation. So I do understand that you have to get rid of it. But I think that those rivalries in college football are pretty fun, Gojo.
Yeah, no, I think we're pretty secure in all of that. But again, much like spilling it over into violence shouldn't be the result for the flag planting here, the pepper spray coming out in the midst of a fight that's ultimately a fight on the football field where no one's life is actually in danger out there, to me seems incredibly excessive given the context of that. And so I'll be curious if we ever really get answers on the fallout of a lot of that and what happens in that situation. But again, it's one of those things that now, it's a different tenor going into conference championship weekend too. These games are a lot more corporate. The environments around them tend to reflect some of that. And certainly once we get to the CFP, hey, we'll have home games, but in most cases they won't be these same things. And so this will be a problem we get to leave in that final week of the season, Dad. But it's one that I'm sure now they're all getting prepared for next season and beyond of how they're going to handle this going forward. And you were absolutely right. That's going to be in the hands of the conference commissioners and the people that make those decisions there.
Yeah, I don't think we'll ever get a resolution on the pepper spray. I think it's just going to kind of go away. And I think it's one weekend out of the year where they're going to try and grab the easiest fix. And the easiest fix is don't plant the flag. Like I said, the team will find some other way to denigrate the logo. But I think the easiest thing to do is take away and it's a shame that you have to do it, but it's the easiest thing to try and squelch the situation.
I still want to know and see where that flag landed in the NC State-North Carolina game when dude just javelin tossed it. That made me nervous. The Trident made me nervous. All of it seemed to get a little bit out of hand. Coming up next, speaking of out of hand, what the hell's going on with the Jets and how are we still talking about them? Next.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Jesse Cofield, Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., and Charlotte Wilder here with you. And the wheels are coming off the bus for the Jets, right? Another week, another loss, but the wheels may be coming off. However, Aaron Rodgers still finding a way to throw his teammates under that bus.
Why do you think statistically and the plays aren't, like the health is now there, but maybe the numbers aren't what you'd expect it to be?
Well, there's 11 guys on the field, Sometimes it's my fault, Definitely multiple times today. And then sometimes the details aren't there in some other spots too.
It just keeps coming for Aaron Rodgers, and he just can't seem to stop throwing people under the bus. What's going on?
Well, I mean, he did blame everybody there. He blamed himself too. So that wasn't the normal I confess he did it situation. He did say he made mistakes as well. Listen, it's just a mess. Every time he talks, it's going to make a headline. He has thrown people under the bus before, but this time, like I said, he admitted he did some wrong. It's an absolute mess that makes a headline that amazes me that we're talking about a Jets team still. But when you have Aaron Rodgers, there's headlines.
I guess. I'm just so numb to this team. They stink. They're a bad football team. They're a poorly run organization. Aaron Rodgers is not the quarterback he used to be. And so, we'll react to this some as a lifetime achievement award for people that get upset with most things that Aaron Rodgers says. And if we really want to parse it, it was kind of unnecessary for him to even go that route from a leadership standpoint. But God, haven't we waved bye-bye to the notion of competent leadership in the Jets organization for a long time now to begin with? So I sort of throw my hands up because I understand, we're in the media machine. Aaron Rodgers is good for business. Anytime he talks, we're all going to kind of listen. But we're on our final year of this for the most part. Until he starts a podcast or does something post-career, whatever other things people invent for him to do, this is probably over. And Charlotte, this Jets season has been over for a while now. This football team is not enjoyable to watch. They don't do many things well. And so talking about them feels like a waste of breath.
Hear me out. This is one of the greatest dramas that we've seen in a long time in the NFL. I would say, why are we talking about Aaron Rodgers if they still had the same coach, if they still had the same GM, if they hadn't traded to get one of his buddies, if he hadn't been doing this the whole time? But the fact is, Aaron Rodgers is a guy in a hot dog suit from I Think You Should Leave, looking around going, we're all trying to find the guy who did this. We're at a certain point, when you're the only guy left and everybody else around you is no longer in the position they were in because everybody's been trying to find someone to blame. And then that guy still gets up at the podium and he says, I guess I have some of it's my fault. Some of it's the guys who weren't in the right place when he, I just think yes, you can say it's a waste of breath, but it's also really entertaining. And I think that it is an amazing drama that we are witnessing. And it is also a major act of hubris that we are seeing from this man to continue to do this and get up there. And so, I understand from a sports standpoint, the Jets suck. Why are we talking about them? But I also think from, as someone who hosts a show called The Sports Gossip Show, this does feel pretty juicy to me, Mike.
But it felt juicy to me, Charlotte, a month and a half ago. We're just playing the hits at this point for the Jets because this is all we have because the football has become so lackluster at this point that we don't have any of that to point to there. None of the drama is new in what we're talking about. So I just feel like we're in the late seasons of a show like a sitcom on TV that's just replaying old bits to try and get cheap laugh tracks underneath. And Dad, they're not even accomplishing that much for me anymore.
This is peak Stugatz, right? He saw this coming when Aaron Rodgers, even last year, when is it all going to fall apart? Well, it fell apart four plays in when he tore his Achilles. Then he had no hope again that the glass was cracked and not half full coming into the season. They're a bad football team. And I certainly get it, Charlotte, from your aspect of there is drama and gossip to talk about, but they are so inept. As a program, it's almost stunning. It's almost as stunning, I put it on the level of how bad Deshaun Watson is playing. Nobody expected him to play as bad as he did, get hurt multiple times like he did, and for that contract to be such an albatross, maybe not to be as good as he was in Houston, but not as bad as it's been. I don't think there was anybody outside of Stu Gatz who thought it would be this bad in New York, to where A, he would get hurt 4 plays in, and B, he plays now, but the team stinks. It is going to be such a brand new team next year from top to bottom. Even Bezos as the owner, maybe, maybe top to bottom, that it's almost Charlotte head scratching of just how bad it went.
Well, I think that's part of what is fascinating to me about it. Part of what I still find interesting is, like, from a management standpoint, from an environmental standpoint, the way that they let it get to this point. I also think that, Mike, when you said it's a bad sitcom, it sort of reminds me of like the later seasons of Selling Sunset, where I started watching, what are they on, season 7, and it's the same drama and it's the same stuff, and I still was kind of into it, and then I got bored, but then I'd see something and I'd be like, well, I know all the characters, so I'd get sucked back in, even though it's all contrived and it's the same thing. It's like the mess of it, I think, just kind of keeps me coming back. But you're right, it's also very boring. Like, it's just boring at this point too, in terms of what we're seeing, because we've seen it all before.
It is, certainly. And so we will leave Aaron Rodgers and the Jets to figure out what they're going to do. I saw Woody Johnson wasn't named the ambassador for the UK in the Trump administration, so they get to keep dealing with that Johnson around there instead of the other Johnson there, and round we go for an organization that'll still see no meaningful change. In other NFL news, we did get a resolution on something new that happened this last weekend, the Azeez Al-Shaair hit on Trevor Lawrence that knocked him out of the game and got Azeez thrown out of that game here, now has prompted a suspension from the NFL. According to ESPN NFL insider Adam Schefter, the NFL suspending Azeez Al-Shaair 3 games for the hit delivered a Sunday against Jags quarterback Trevor Lawrence. Dad, I'm a little bit surprised at this number. I understand he's a repeat offender, and I understand it was a terrible visual for the NFL of having Trevor Lawrence down there in the fencing posture, knocked out in that game. But I also do have empathy's maybe going too far, but I understand, hey, he went too far on a play that can be bang at time for defenders. I thought maybe he'd get a game here. 3 was a little stunning to me.
Yeah, I'm not stunned, though I wish it wasn't 3 games. I'm not stunned where the league is, especially with head injuries, where they've been in a lawsuit and where they are now. John Runyon, the NFL Vice President of Football Operations, basically said repeated violations of rules intended to protect the health and safety of players and promote sportsmanship. That's why he was suspended. He's a line stepper, right? I mean, as much as his coach, D'Amico Ryans, doesn't want to say he's not that type of player, he's a line stepper. I mean, he occasionally crosses a line, and he's been fined for it. And this one really put a quarterback down. Now, it shouldn't matter that it's a quarterback, but we know what quarterbacks are in the NFL, and it looked ugly with Trevor Lawrence going in the fencing position. Listen, if Trevor Lawrence popped up after that hit and continued to play, I honestly don't think we get a 3-game suspension. But I think Trevor was hurt, got carted off the field, was in the fencing position. It looked awful. Fights kept happening after it. So I think they said, you know what? We need to really step up here.
Yeah, it seemed to me like a very clear message from the NFL as well to everybody else, which is like, this is just not going to be tolerated to an extent that I'm surprised by. Three games is a lot, but I guess that's they feel that that's where they're at, GoJo.
They feel like that's where we're there. And I think, to Dad's point, protecting against the optics of this situation. They found the guy who did it in that situation. Charlotte, you said you were looking and trying to find the guy who did this before. We found him. His name is Emerson Latzia, and he's standing out in the desert dressed like a hot dog here. So if you're ever wondering who did it, the answer around DraftKings is almost always our sweet chinchilla and a fan of America's team, the Jacksonville Jaguars, Emerson Latzia. Coming up, we'll finish up the Golden at Bat making its way to the show. Maybe? Question mark? All right, time to finish off the show the way we always do. It's this, that, and the third. It's 3 quick stories to send you into the rest of the day. Make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review the show. Leave us a 5-star rating and check us out live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network. Check us out on our YouTube channel, GoJo and Golic on YouTube, where you can hit subscribe, hit the bell, and it'll tell you right when we're going live. But if you happen to miss us live or any of our great guests, thank you to Charlotte Wilder, our friend and the co-host of Oddball with Amin El Hassan and the Sports Gossip Show. You can check those out here on DraftKings Network, at least the Oddball version of that, every day but Friday. And you can check that out wherever you get our podcast or right here as soon as we get done on YouTube. Guys, let's get started with something very interesting. Baseball, we know, has done a better job in recent years of being a little bit more receptive to ideas on how to improve some of the entertainment product of their game. We know most notably the pitch clock, which has worked to great effect in not only shortening games, but just livening up the pace and action of Major League Baseball. Well, Rob Manfred the other day in a podcast appearance on John Oran's Puck podcast dropped a breadcrumb about the possibility of the golden at bat making its way to Major League Baseball. This idea that late in the game, in the 7th inning or later, you would have the opportunity just once in the game in a high leverage situation to go and take one of your star players and put them up at the plate. Dad, this is obviously an idea that we've heard Billy Gill and the guys at the Levitard Show try and fix baseball for years. Where are you at as Major League Baseball has embraced a little more change on the golden at bat potentially getting involved?
That is a big change. If I were to do it, I would do it 7th inning or later just for the trailing team. And then obviously if the trailing team does it in the 7th or 8th inning and they take the lead, then the other team is now trailing and they can do it then in the 8th or the 9th inning. So that's the way I would do it so it doesn't disrupt too much. I would go 7th inning or later if they're going to do it. If they're going to do it. I have no idea if they will. I would do it 7th inning or later. Only trailing team would do it, Charlotte.
I am usually like, yes, let's disrupt everything, but there's something that I really, really love about the sanctity of the batting order where it's like, if you're stuck with this guy who's 8 and he's been sucking, you're still stuck with him. I guess I understand how exciting that would make the end of a game. And you're like, ooh, are they going to do it? Who are they going to choose? So from that standpoint, yeah, go for it. But I do I love a batting order. What can I say?
I don't know. Didn't you remember? Go ahead, Senior.
I would say it's always about the offense and improving the offense and the excitement of the game, right? Of getting someone in the batter's box who could knock it out of the yard or change the lead. I mean, that's what this is all about, Jesse.
I mean, I feel like we should just do you have like a celebrity first pitch, do the celebrity golden at bat. Like, bases are loaded. Here comes Danny DeVito. Like, just throw in a celebrity if you want to do it that way, okay?
Martha Stewart is batting 5th.
Yes.
The best part of that would be forcing the celebrities to come out to spring training to get a little work in so they'd be ready for those moments. It's now you've got to include them in the process from tip to tip, from farm to table in order to make this happen. So I'm all for it. But Charlotte, to your point, I am not a diehard baseball fan. I would be curious what the reception would be like and what the thought is from actual baseball fans at GoJo and Golic on Twitter. Baseball fans, are you actually in on the golden at bat? This idea that you could leverage this situation to try and get your best player at the plate in a high leverage situation, because I get people, especially with a sport as numbers driven as baseball, maybe not wanting to tinker with so much as to make it a little bit unrecognizable. But I do think it continues to be encouraging to me that Rob Manfred, for all the criticism that he has endured, and a lot of it justifiably so, does remain open to ways to continue to try and say, hey, let's make baseball the most fun and accessible to the most people it can possibly be, understanding that the core of our base is still going to be there largely. So, Jesse, from this to that, let's go to that. What do we got?
Yeah, the WNBA has entered the schedule release chat. The Chicago Sky released their schedule doing the suspect trend. So I think this is a TikTok thing. I don't know. Yes. I'm not on TikTok, guys, so I don't know. But it looks like, yeah, so it's like you say something funny about a person who's running. So they've done it where they superimpose the other team's logo on top of the person running, and they said something funny. And I like that they preface the whole thing at the beginning of the video. It says, we hope you take this as a joke, because that's the way the internet is now. They're like, haha, it's tongue in cheek. Please don't be mad at us.
Yeah, Dad, to try and explain this trend to you, it'd be like if we did this meme with you and you were jogging away, I would say suspect only takes baths in retread bath water, and you would turn around and be like, wait a minute, that's me, I'm stunned.
Suspect doesn't know how to send an email, like stuff like that.
Yeah, suspect routinely forgets his passwords and relies on his children and wife for this.
Suspect doesn't know his bank account number. You know what I mean? Okay.
Easy. Here's the best thing I'll say about anything released on TikTok. I don't have it, so I can't watch it. End of story.
Oh, no, you know what? No, my dad is the biggest liar in all of sports because what my dad does is just waits for all of these things to make it over to his Instagram reels. And you'll sit there in the couch. If you're in the room with my dad at any point and it's quiet, what you'll hear is the sound of him scrolling through his Instagram timeline or Facebook or whatever app he's on that just gives you these things secondhand and laughing at all of these videos.
With the stillness of a lizard.
And I'm alone in doing that? We were talking about TikTok. I don't have TikTok. I don't see it on TikTok. I have Instagram, so I do
for TikToks to make it to Reels.
Yes.
But I do that too.
Yes,
I'm not going to lie. I do that too. It's like
Yeah.
once it makes it to Instagram, then I find out about it.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you're not
TikTok.
abstaining
It's pretty
from
fun.
TikTok then. You're just
right.
getting it through an intermediary. You're getting it through like a side channel here.
Yes.
But I digress.
I just don't need
Charlotte, I
another
have enjoyed
thing.
seeing them get in on these trends. Another person that Dad wouldn't get from TikTok is I saw the Dallas Wings had Keith Lee, the famous food reviewer from TikTok, go and do their schedule release too. So I like seeing other leagues get in on this bit.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. I just talked a big game about like using TikTok. I don't know who Keith Lee is. I feel older every single day on this beautiful earth of ours, but I'm glad they did it. I'm sure it was great. Wouldn't even have known who he was if I'd seen it. So I don't think it makes much of a difference that I didn't see it.
Ignorance is bliss.
Oh,
yes.
You know what? Here, let's finish this off with a person I think you guys might recognize, Jesse, as we get on to the third here. Matthew McConaughey, recognizable name from film and television that people may be familiar with.
Yeah, so Bijan Robinson was part of Outer Banks this season, and apparently his acting mentor is Matthew McConaughey. So somebody explain to me who he was on Outer Banks. Did either of you watch this? I know you didn't.
I did.
You
I
did?
did. And
No.
Listen, I had watched all the seasons, I think 3 before this fourth. I think it's a fourth season. I don't even know. But I saw the end of the previous season, and it could have gone either way. They could have ended the series, or they could have continued. They decided to continue. We talked about this on air a while ago. I had to decide, was I going to invest time? I did. I'm not going to lie. I don't recall seeing Bijan Robinson. I know he just had like a cameo in it. I don't recall seeing him, but I'm more distraught that I watched the season. Again, these teenagers from the Outer Banks went to Morocco and just destroyed a bunch of mercenaries, a bunch of people who for a living kill people, yet these teenagers were able to outdo them. And it is going to a next season. It is guaranteed another season that I'm going to have to freaking sit through and watch how these people in the Outer Banks with no money can get to places around the world and defeat these mercenaries. God help me for watching this. Congrats to Bijan Robinson getting into acting with Matthew McConaughey, but I should be shot for watching this series, and yet I continue to watch it.
I thought Outer Banks was like Summer House. I thought this was just like a love triangle of teenagers in the South.
I think it started that way.
What?
I think it started that way. And then it just snowballed.
Guys, this is the realization here is we talked about it before. My dad is watching the 3-9 Aaron Rodgers-led Jets of television shows right now.
Thank you.
This is exactly what he is watching. Outer Banks is the late-stage Aaron Rodgers New York Jets, Dad. That's who you've become.
Yeah. You're right. I'm guilty as charged. I hated myself every minute I watched it, yet I watched it. And they finished an episode, and I went right to the next episode. I just consumed it.
He's an addict jonesing for the next hit of Outer Banks. If you're jonesing for the next hit of GoJo and Golic, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, and review us. Leave us a 5-star rating. Check us out here Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern. Thanks so much. God help you all. We'll talk to you tomorrow.